Texas. Today, my team is going to be presenting a webinar on deeper and student-centered learning, really sharing the perspectives of the principal, instructional coach, teacher, and student voice on this topic. From the work that we've done in the I3 Early College Expansion Partnership federal grant with Jobs for the Future here in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas with PSJA, ISD, and Brownsville ISD in Deep South Texas. Today, I'm trying to advance the slide and it's not working. There we go. Today with me, my team of excellent instructional coaches is going to be presenting this webinar. We've got Dr. Marisa Chapa, who's our professional development specialist in this work, Dr. Robina Salgado, who's an instructional coach with Brownsville ISD, and Amina Garza-Foley, who is an instructional coach in FAR San Juan Alamo ISD. Not with us today, but did help in the development of this presentation is Aliermi Valdez, an instructional coach in Brownsville ISD, and Francine Phoenix, who was working with our principals on CIS implementation facilitator. She's no longer with the project, but she was instrumental in the development of this PD session. Before we begin, I'd like to get us started with some norms. And so again, I ask please that everybody mute their mic unless you need to speak. If you do have a question throughout the course of the webinar, please feel free to send me a chat message. I'm not able to see if you're raising your hand, so I think a chat message would be best. We are going to open up the webinar for participation at some point, so that brings me to a couple of other points. If you'd please have paper and pen or pencil available. Also, because this will be an interactive webinar, we all would really appreciate your readiness and willingness to participate. And I think those are all the norms at this point. So before I get my team started on the content of this webinar, are there any questions? All right, well, again, thank you so much for joining us today on this webinar regarding student-centered and deeper learning and the lessons we've learned during our early college expansion grant here in the Rio Grande Valley. And I am going to introduce Dr. Marisa Chapa, who's going to guide us through the next minutes of this session.
Hello, I'm going to begin with going over the goals for this session. So we're going to begin by clarifying and understanding the importance of a student-centered learning environment. We're going to look at it through the eyes of an administrator, instructional coach, teacher, and some students. Next, we're going to examine how student-centered learning is, what it looks like in our classrooms. And then we're going to review some of the attributes to that. And finally, we're going to discuss the roles and responsibilities of all those involved in our schools. So all our educational stakeholders will discuss those roles as well. So I want to begin by, I want to share this cartoon with you. I want you to take a few minutes to look at it, read what it says there. As you can see, we have a gentleman there, and it says we want less of that and more of the student-centered learning. So the goal for today, like we said earlier, is to discuss that whole release of learning, where the learning is part of the child, where the child takes responsibility and takes a main role in the learning. So this is the part where we ask for your participation. If you have your pen, pencil, and paper ready, we're going to do an activity which we call a writing to learn, and you'll learn more about it in the next few slides. I'm going to ask you to jot down your definition, words or phrases that describe what student-centered learning is. I'll give you a minute to do that, so please take this time to write this, what student-centered learning means to you. Remember, you can talk about any of your experiences, any articles you've read, what it means to you or looks like in your head. For about 30 more seconds. At this time, do we have anyone who would like to share out what they wrote? Would someone like to share what they jotted down? Okay, so student-centered learning, we're going to continue and we're going to learn more about that in the upcoming slides.
Let me at this point just say we didn't hear from any of you about your definition or words to describe student-centered learning. That's fine. We're going to go to into the definition and attributes in more detail. I did want to let you all know that on the Community of Practice website where you signed up for the webinar, we have posted resources about student-centered learning. One is authored by JFF entitled Students at the Center of Learning, and that article specifically talks about how student-centered learning needs to be personalized for the learner, competency-based, takes place anytime and anywhere, and that students own their thinking. So again, please take some time after the webinar is over or even now to pull up the resources that we have uploaded on the Community of Practice for Student-Centered Learning.
So we're going to continue. Why student-centered learning? So we know that student-centered learning leads to rigor in the classroom and also leads to our students becoming critical thinkers. We also want to promote innovation and, of course, that discovery and active learning in our students. So we want them to be able to enjoy it. We want students to be able to be great thinkers and also enjoy the learning. And when we know that that's going on, it also gives us opportunities for all of our students to be engaged in the work, and the motivation is there as well. But then also this leads to shared responsibility. So because we release this learning to our students, they have the opportunity to own their work. Like we said earlier, it becomes personalized and it's about the student. And so they become that critical thinker that we want them to be. And it also really reshapes the role of the teacher. The teacher becomes a facilitator in the whole learning cycle and in the classroom. So we talked about the why, but we also have research to support the importance of student-centered learning. So in this slide, you'll see that a research conducted by Stafford University in 2014 shows that there's an increase in student learning. And this study was conducted in 4 urban high schools in California. And these schools, they utilize student-centered learning. These schools embodied features of student learning where curriculum, instruction, and the assessment was designed to engage students through the learning process. And the students learned skills in communication, collaboration, and becoming analytical thinkers. These students also had the opportunity to have their learning personalized. And another aspect of it is that teachers learned to work together. They collaborated on the improvement of the instructional practices. So the leadership among all teachers and adults was shared. So the outcome of this, of the 4 schools that participated in this study, they had a focus on student-centered approaches, and that indicated that students were prepared and successful in college, career, and life. But here we see the areas of where they had growth, which is graduation rates, where it showed, for example, 90 to 95% of African-American students in these schools graduated compared to the district and the state average, which is at 66%. And we also had Latino students, limited English proficient students, and economically disadvantaged students were also doing higher in 3 out of the 4 schools, and their increase ranged from 10 to 24% higher than the state average. And the next one, student achievement, was exhibited where they exhibited greater gains in their achievement on the California STAR test in English language arts, and they also showed on the California high school exit exams growth in both ELA and math. But the big finding was that student learning was greater for students of economically disadvantaged backgrounds and for those whose parents had not attended college. And the next area there, college persistence. In 2 of the high schools, we had 96 to 100% of the students who completed the California college course requirement. And finally, in the last section there, the college preparation, students between 69 to 79% were prepared for college and course completion because they had other added bonuses, not just the academics, but also were encountered the challenges that they encounter in college, were prepared to meet those challenges. So this study focused on the student-centered learning classroom and how it led to an increase in academics, in graduation rates, college prep, and college persistence. The next few slides, we're going to have Amina talk about the common instructional framework, and Ms. Foley is going to review those attributes with you.
Hello, everybody. So based on what Marisa was saying and the research, we have trained close to 845 teachers to utilize the common instructional framework to master a student-centered classroom. For instance, looking at collaborative group work and also looking at classroom talk, we train the teachers to look at this as purposeful outcomes so students have a chance to talk through their thinking and their learning. So when you use the common instructional framework in collaboration with other things, then you're going to see greater outcomes with student learning. For instance, like Writing to Learn helps students synthesize their own learning, and they do that in writing, thinking, and that they're showing us what they're thinking. In addition, literacy groups provide interaction with text. Again, all of this to help synthesize their learning. With questioning and scaffolding, students have a voice in critical thinking instead of just relying on the teacher. And so we looked at the common instructional framework and training the teachers to see it as a vehicle for student voice, for student thinking, and for a means to allow the teacher to become the facilitator and allow the students to be owners of their own learning. Now we're going to hear from Mrs. Rebecca Luna from Isaguirre Middle School at the PSJA ISD, who is going to share her perspective about how this common instructional framework has supported her middle school campus.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Luna, principal at Isaguirre Middle School. Common instructional framework has impacted our school in many different ways. The first way that it has impacted us is the students have really taken their own learning and taken it to another level. They work in classes together. There's always a classroom talk. There's writing to learn. Just the students have, the teacher is the facilitator in the classroom. Students have taken ownership of their own learning. That has happened because the instructional coach has provided professional development for the teachers, has modeled for the teachers. She provides them with lessons. She plans with them, and she's always assisting not only the teachers but also the students to make sure that they're working together, that the common instructional framework is happening in the classroom. Also, us as administrators, when we provide professional development to the teachers, we provide it in a way using the common instructional framework. We want to make sure that they understand that it's not only them, it's a teamwork, and it is something that our campus uses in all of the classrooms and anything that we do here at Isaguirre Middle School. We're not perfect. It's not perfect. It's a work in progress, but everybody has bought into the common instructional framework. We've been at it for about 6 years, and little by little, every year, we see that students move from grade level to grade level, and when they become 8th graders, classroom talk is natural, writing to learn is natural, just collaborating is all natural because the common instructional framework starts from 6th grade, and it goes all the way to 8th grade in every single classroom. Thank you.
So with Mrs. Luna, to sum it up, basically, she has come to see and to learn that the students are in control of their learning, the teacher is a facilitator, and through instructional coaching, she's been able to see that in her classrooms. She's also been able to see that, you know, not just that the campus administrators have also are the ones who are modeling it. So it's not just her, it's not just the instructional coach, but it's everybody together as a team working on this. And finally, she says that the buy-in has been critical for her campus, and that the common instructional framework has helped in that in terms of now everybody talks the same language. When we say writing to learn, the kids know what that means no matter what classroom they're in. And so basically at this point, they're seeing results, and it's been a good thing for them. Now we're going to talk about the roles and responsibilities, and Dr. Robina Salgado is going to walk us through this.
Hi, good afternoon. So every individual in a campus plays an important role in creating a student-centered learning environment. This slide reviews in what ways stakeholders on campuses supported the achievement of student learning environment in our work during the Early College Expansion Grant. To begin, we have the campus leaders. They supported the Common Instructional Framework, which was our vehicle to create a student-centered learning environment. We used the SIF rubric from JFS to determine the fidelity of implementation, and they were modeling protocols during faculty meetings. That was really important, and of course, having monthly planning meetings. As far as the teachers, we began to see SIF implemented more often in the classroom. Teachers were beginning to embed more SIF strategies. They would meet with their instructional coaches to go through coaching cycles and also participate in instructional rounds. The instructional coaches on campus coach the teachers, as I said before, on a one-on-one basis where they would go through the coaching cycle. We had observations for trend data collections to make sure the student-centered learning trends were meeting the vision of the administration for that campus. Instructional coaches developed and presented research-based professional development, and we use rubrics to support teachers in their instruction. And lastly, students are sometimes forgotten, but they're the most important part of the student-centered learning environment. We want the kids to flourish in thinking about what they're learning. We want them to learn how to scaffold their learning and build on it by themselves or with a peer. Creating that self-management skills is important for them to be college and career ready. And then, again, on campus, we need those supports there to guide them to find the college that fits them, to find the financial aid opportunities they need, and, of course, applying for scholarships. So at this point, we're gonna do a small activity. So if you take some time on an index card, I would like you to think about And if you're not exactly on a campus, think about ways you've seen schools support student-centered learning, or tell us about how your school supports student-centered learning. And I'm going to give you about a minute to do that starting now. Okay, is anybody ready to share?
Now, let's not all speak at once. I know that some of you are professionals in schools out there. Okay, so Cesar Mickens says, project-based learning is how schools support student-centered learning. Exactly, that's a great way. It's another vehicle. Anybody else? You can unmute yourself and share. So I know that in many of our STEM schools and early college high schools across the United States, the Common Instructional Framework and problem-based learning are two of the main vehicles.
I think Tara and her team from Denver has some really good examples. Why don't you guys share?
That'd be great.
Hi, everyone. This is Melody from Denver. We work in an office that is housed in a school called CEC, which is a career education center. And in the afternoons, students are able to select from different career classes like culinary, they have fashion and an auto shop and different types of careers that they get to explore in addition to their academic classes.
Yeah, so that really gives them the option of learning about what they're interested in, and therefore supports their relevancy and what's important to them, creating student-centered learning. Very good. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And the next slide, so we've already talked about the principal perspective. So this is the instructional coach perspective. These three ladies are the instructional coaches from Brownsville ISD. And we asked them a few questions, and you're going to hear them now share their perspective.
What types of support does the instructional coach provide to promote student-centered learning?
Instructional coaches focus on how teachers plan to maintain effective student engagement. Effective student engagement looks like students collaborating, participating in notebook writing, digging deeper by using questioning protocols, or participating in meaningful discussion. Instructional coaching emphasizes student engagement strategies by providing opportunities for listening, including and writing, where the teacher releases the learning and becomes more of a facilitator. How does the pedagogy in classroom transform from the beginning of the early college expansion partnership? Well, first of all, the culture has changed. Administrators now have the expectations for teachers to implement the protocols within all of their lifetime. In addition, teachers see administration as support to aid them in the process. Have also evolved, and students are now the doers in the classroom. Walking the classroom, students are speaking, thinking, reading, and writing to learn. They are active participants of self-motivated. In going to the classrooms now, you observe intentional seating arrangements to start seeing well students. Classrooms are set up in groups where students are assigned roles. Teachers are now required to plan purposely high level in order to avoid cold calling and low level questioning. Teachers also utilize a variety of differentiated instruction, foster student growth, and respect their peers. This allows students to develop their self-esteem and build college career readiness. Another transformation is the focus of college and career readiness by helping develop students' abilities to problem solve, think critically, inquire, self-monitor, teach each other, and learn from others.
So the next slide sums up the perspective of the internal coaches. So there was 3 big umbrellas that they discussed: planning, where there's more planning with engagement in mind, intentional seating, plan questioning. You don't see as much cold calling and drill and kill anymore. The culture of the school and the classrooms. Administrators are not only seen as evaluators anymore, they're reached out to and they're seen as a support system. Administrators expect to see student-centered learning, and teachers are becoming facilitators in the classroom. It's no longer a sit-and-get 45-minute lecture-based classroom. And lastly, the college and career readiness of the schools. Students are able to develop their ability to problem solve. They're self-monitoring. They're teaching from each other. And it's not in a place where students are no longer connected with what they are learning.
Okay, so far we've heard from a principal, a few of our campus instructional coaches, and now we're going to hear from a teacher, Denise Guajardo, Isaguirre Middle School teacher at PSJISD, and she's going to share why a student-centered classroom is so important.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Denise Guajardo, and I'm a teacher at Isaguirre Middle School, and I'm also a part-time instructional coach. It is teacher-centered. My lessons end up being more lecture type. Students practice and review, and they practice and review. And I can always tell when I'm talking too much because my students are bored and distracted. So when my lessons are planned with student-centered activities where students interact with each other, using challenging content individually and collaboratively, their learning automatically shoots up to a higher level of complex thinking. Students are processing their thinking, they're making inferences, they're drawing conclusions, they're hypothesizing, and they're moving their own learning forward. When my role is more of a facilitator in the classroom, the learning is student-centered. Students work collaboratively to exchange and discuss ideas, and they move their own learning forward. They learn how to think about and process this content. They learn how to reason with one another and explain their reasons to each other as well. All the while, they're generating new ideas. The learning is evident in the conversations that my own students are having. And because I'm the instructional coach, this learning is also, I see it evident in other classrooms as well. So most importantly, I think that students develop and practice their communication skills that's going to help them be successful in college and in their future careers. However, it isn't easy for us teachers to give up that leading role. We love the spotlight sometimes. But when you begin placing your students in center stage, you begin to witness a type of learning that is not only more complex, but it's a type of learning that continues to evolve before your eyes. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice to be an effective facilitator, and my teachers can attest to that. It's a continuous work in progress, but when you have the right structures in place and you begin to see what your students are capable of, you start to see this complex learning unfold. Your students begin to evolve as complex thinkers. Student-centered learning is definitely having a positive impact on student achievement at my school, and it's helping Isaguirre Middle School close that achievement gap.
Denise does a really good job of talking about how she has seen a student-centered learning classroom
help close the achievement gap. And some of the things she talked about is that, you know, if you provide a student-centered learning classroom, you're going to see great things happening. You're going to see children's communication skills develop, and you're going to see them actually being more complex in their thinking. And that happens in collaborative group work. That happens in classroom talk. That's happening when they're writing to learn and things like that. So on that campus, they really have seen some great things happening when they've decided as teachers to not be in control so much and allow the kids to drive everything that's happening in their classroom and tailor personalized learning to them, for their students. So really thankful for Denise's honesty and just the things that she has seen as she reflected over this.
Finally, we're going to hear a perspective from a student. The student you're about to hear is 14 years old. It's a 9th grade freshman student. The student has received 1.5 credit of college credit, 1 credit in Spanish, 0.5 credit in art, and this student has chosen the biomedical career pathway.
How has the way you are learning changed in the past couple of years, and how has it helped you? Well, one thing I definitely noticed is the teachers started to finish the different types of essays, and I've seen a lot more working based on active questions. It helps that they introduce one question at a time instead of introducing the whole process all at once. In the past years, the teachers have been more focused on teaching us the correct structures, especially this year when this teacher taught us basic structure and different ways we can use each component. Before this year, I've never really had any confidence in my learning, but as the school is passing, I think I've really improved with my teacher's help. What classroom processes help you internalize content in the best way? In my class, we follow a process when we're working with any type of essay. When we're first introduced to it, we practice at the class, and everyone in the classroom cooperates with it, and our teacher helps us think deeper by asking us questions related to the topic. When we complete it, we all get in groups to one attempt a different prompt. During this whole process, our teachers always there to help us if we get stuck on anything, and we know that we need to continue practicing for our own benefit. Then we go ahead and work on our own. Working together definitely helps us improve already.
In this section, we wanted to share a little bit about, over the course of our work during the Early College Expansion Project, some of the structures that were in place that helped us implement student-centered learning. We kind of grouped everything under these 4 umbrellas, the first one being professional development to the district. Here, teachers received monthly PD. We had steering committee meetings or committee meetings that were centered around planning to push the instruction of the campus and other decisions. Training the instructional coach. Here, learning walks occurred and calibrations with the instructional coach occurred. Then we had instructional coaching, and this is the umbrella for teachers specifically, where there was coaching cycles where teachers pre-conference, pre-planned, observed, and debriefed. And a big one is instructional rounds that happened under the instructional coaching umbrella. And finally, leadership coaching. JFF provided leadership coaches to the principals and early college high school directors. And they did learning walks and calibration and also debrief conversations with them.
All right, everybody. Well, I really hope that that we can get some participation on this activity that we're going to do now. This is a question and answer opportunity. And so one of the things that one of the ways or strategies that we've used to promote student-centered learning here in Texas is by changing the culture of questioning in the classroom. And what I mean by that is instead of the teachers asking the questions, teaching the students to be the questioners. So what we've given you here are some question stems that we would like you to use. Choose one of these stems to ask us or anybody in the audience that has expertise in this area a question about student-centered deeper learning. So I'm going to give you between 1 to 2 minutes to choose one of these stems and write your question. Okay, I think it's been about 1.5 minutes. I'm going to open up. Okay, great. We've got some questions here. That's super exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and read the first question from Julie Edmonds to everyone is, how do you test or evaluate the impact of specific student-centered practices? So I'm going to let my team here answer, or if anybody else in the audience has an answer to this, we'll take your answer.
So here in Texas, we use our state examination known as the STAR, and so that's one way that we can utilize what best practice looks like in our classrooms. And the rigor of the test pretty much is aligned with student-centered practices.
And here is where I can attest to one of our I3 high schools in Brownsville ISD meeting all seven distinctions on the Texas Performance Index, which is very rare for a high school to meet all 7 distinctions. And this high school has definitely transformed their way of teaching from a direct teaching environment before this project to now a very student-centered learning environment. I would also say that another way to evaluate the impact of student learning or student-centered practices is the success rate in dual credit courses. Specifically, I would say the success rate of dual credit courses on the college campus. There's been numerous research studies showing that students that have already developed the skills of questioning, synthesizing their own learning through writing, forming their own study groups and collaborative learning groups are more successful in the college classroom during their high school years. Anybody else out there on the webinar want to give some feedback on testing or evaluating the impact of specific student-centered practices? All right, so I'm so glad we've got all these questions. So the next question from Kara Schneider is, or this is Melody, how else would you encourage a culture shift for teachers? Are there any other specific best practices you could share beyond questioning? So I believe that Robina mentioned the framework that we've used in the grant to transform instruction in the classroom, which has been professional development, instructional coaching, training the instructional coaches. But I'd say one that we haven't talked about much is leadership coaching. Leadership coaching, and specifically around instructional leadership, is crucial to instructional transformation. We've learned some big lessons about leadership in this work, and as a matter of fact, Sarah Hooker from JFF just published a piece on the importance of leadership in the Early College Expansion Project. The instructional coaches in the schools have definitely noticed the difference between principals that are more managerial as compared to principals that are more instructional leaders. The principals that are instructional leaders spend more visibility out in the hallways, spend more time in the classroom, make time in their schedules to have face-to-face conversations with teachers. And that's where we've really seen the change happen, is in the schools where the leaders have bought in to this instructional transformation, the student-centered learning, just like the principal that you saw on this webinar, Rebecca Luna from Izagiri Middle School in PSJA. Those principals that are standing behind student-centered learning have been a huge lever for the success of this work. Another question, what changes might you recommend to the 4 organizational buckets? Are there additional buckets needed? So I believe that Tara is referring to professional development, training, instructional coaching, and leadership coaching. I don't want to speak for my entire team, but if I were to answer that there's an additional bucket needed, I would say work on culture, work on mindset around student achievement, around that all students are capable of rigorous work. Instructional rounds being very important in shifting that mindset, having model classrooms where teachers that lean towards a low culture of expectations have a chance to see classrooms that are truly rigorous and built around text that students can and will be successful when there's high expectations and rigor built into the instructional environment. Does anybody else have another possible bucket that we could add to these 4 buckets?
Having a clear vision and mission, that's what we want.
So Dr. Chapa just mentioned something that goes right along with culture, and that is starting with a clear vision and mission of what instruction is to be like in the classroom. And I know that's been big, especially in one of our school districts in PSJ ISD. The superintendent there, Dr. King, from the beginning has been all about early college high school, but he's also emphasized the importance of student-centered learning. And he's even said about the CIF that he would rather call the CIF tools for the students instead of a common instructional framework. And I think that's really great. Like let's promote a culture. Let's promote the vision of providing students with the tools they need for learning. And Dr. Chapa also mentioned that support systems being aligned. And so we didn't mention that in the 4 buckets for implementing student-centered learning, and I definitely think we should have. That is part of the logic model of this work. There does need to be specialized support systems that are in place in any type of innovative, well, really, I would venture to say in every single school. School systems, support systems where the students feel like they're part of a family, intervention systems that are coherent across the districts. But you know what, it really, really does start with the importance of the classroom teacher and rigor that is happening in the classroom. So that would take me back to say that the importance of accelerating instruction versus remediating instruction. I think that's another mindset shift that we need. And so Julie Edmond says, thank you, I appreciate that, Julie. And yes, Julie, I agree, instructional rounds seem to be very helpful. It is extremely important for all of the teachers involved, not only for the teacher that's being rounded to receive feedback on their problem of practice, or the school itself even to be receiving feedback on their problem of practice, but for the teachers that are ready and willing to learn about implementing a student-centered classroom, being able to see the teachers that are exemplifying that in action. Really, really appreciate the questions. Are there any other questions for us today? I do want to mention again before we close out this session that I've uploaded some resources on the community of practice. I uploaded the document from JFF about student-centered learning. JFF also has a whole series of published articles on deeper student learning on their website. I also uploaded the case study that Marisa was referring to that came out of Stanford University in California with all of the positive benefits that student-centered learning had on classroom learning and college success. I've also uploaded a definition of each common instructional framework strategy produced by JFF, and there are 2 books of protocols that are uploaded with the webinar, protocols that can help the teacher that is just beginning at this implement student-centered learning in the classroom. I do want to say that eventually you want to see student-centered learning get to the level where there's really no protocols needed, where the students really do know how to facilitate their own learning, have discussions on their own, and collaborate with one another, just like you might see in an office environment. Along with that, I can say please go to the teaching channel to see some great videos on how student-centered learning has been implemented in the state of Texas, specifically at early college high schools. So I've got a call to action for all of you, and I'm not going to ask for responses. I just want you to think about this. So how will you commit to any of the items we've talked about today, whether it's changing the culture at your school, whether it's providing more professional development, whether it's thinking about instructional coaching in your school district, committing to instructional leadership with your principals, and which one of the best practices can you ... begin to practice tomorrow? If any of you have any additional questions for our team, here is our contact information. And what I will do is I will create a PDF of this deck, this slide deck, and I'll upload it into the community of practice so that you also have our information there for the life of the webinar. And like Cesar mentioned at the beginning, this webinar was recorded, so feel free to watch it again and let any of your peers know about it. Thanks so much, you all, for your participation today, and I also want to thank my team, Dr. Marisa Chapa, Dr. Robina Salgado, and Amina Foley, for their hard work in putting this presentation together. Thank you too, Julie. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you all later.